Hey everyone! Welcome to this February reading wrap-up. Without too many surprises, it was not a very productive reading month. It's a short month, February. It's always only 4 weeks, it's always a bit short. But I'm still within my average of 4 books a month, so I'm happy with that. Why did I say it was not that productive? Because I did not like all the books I've read. There was a few books that were a bit of a frustration for me this month. I don't know if it's because I have mainly read fantasy. I don't know if it's because this year I'm trying to be a bit more critical of my readings. Maybe it's a bit of both, but yeah, you will see. A few books that I think a lot of people really loved were extremely frustrating for me this month, and I might have destroyed them a tiny bit if you go check my Goodreads review, for example, or if you go on my Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram and you've seen a few stories, I was not too kind with one of the books that I read in February, but we will talk about it in the next few minutes. Let's start by the beginning. The first book I've read in February is Sunbringer by Anna Kanner. This is a sequel. This is a second book following God Killer, and it is Illuminate edition, which is a very, very beautiful edition. I particularly enjoy the sprayed edges. There's like kind of a sort of continuation between book 1 and book 2, and then book 3 that is coming out soon, so I'm hoping they will continue that spread edges, themes and continuation. It's a very beautiful book in general. I've read God Killer a couple of years ago now, so I have to say going into Sunbringer was a bit difficult. I was missing a little bit where we left our characters at in book 1, and it's more of a generic comment. I don't know if that's the case for you, but it's something I would like publisher to do a little bit more, which is, I don't know, when we had to wait 1 or sometimes 2-3 years to get a sequel, put a book recap at the beginning so that we don't forget what was at stake, so that we don't forget main character's name. You know, it would just be nice to have the little index and a reminder of the main events of the previous book. That will definitely have helped me for Sunbringer. I had some bit of trouble to get into the story because of that, but once I was in, it was a very, very nice read and a good, smooth ride. So because this is a sequel, I'm not gonna go too much in depth in the story in itself, but let me tell you that in this second book, the stakes remain high, if not even higher. We are more into the safety of a kingdom and instead of the safety of a person, so the stakes are a bit higher. There's a bigger impact of them. And we also introduced with new conflicts, which is really interesting. What I really liked with that series is the world building and the mythology. So, as you can guess from the title of the first book, we are around gods. Actually, if you haven't read the first book, we are following Inara, a young kid that seems to be attached to a god, and she's orphan, and she meets with Kiesen, which is a god killer, and Kiesen is going to help Inara go on a journey to detach herself from this god, and along the way they meet Elogas, which is a king knight that is also tasked to go to the god city, and so we join them on the journey, and a lot of questions are being asked, a lot of gods. There is different point of view around gods between Kiesen that is made professionally but also for personal reason, wants to kill gods, and Inara, for example, who is attached to one and grew up with one. So this is kind of a very nice perspective. And in book 2, Sunbringer, we are deepening that knowledge on the gods, but also that knowledge and kind of the different nuances of gods and mortals relationship. And we are seeing that relationship is a bit more interdependent and not so much of a submissive relationship. So that was very interesting for me. I'm extremely impressed by the amount of gods that Anna is creating, Anna Kanner is creating. I think there is a lot of thought into that world building, and it's extremely enjoyable, so I really like the setting of it. Regarding the plot, I actually appreciated how we're getting a bit more geopolitical stakes, like I was mentioning at the beginning, and how there is much more happening when we are looking at things from a bigger picture. I really appreciate the fact that Kisen, one of our main characters, is now looking at the bigger picture and putting kind of a reservation on the sides for the greater good. So that was a very interesting arc, character development we got from her. It's my favorite character because she's not afraid to say the F words to God. I think I will be, but she's not at all, so it's a very strong character and someone I really like. I've also liked Skadi's growing arc. Skadi is a little god attached to Inara, and it's especially with him that we're gonna explore a little bit more that mythology aspect and that god's human relationship, and I really like the reflection he's getting into. I think there is a lot of food for thought here in general when it comes to religion and what religion brings to people, so that was quite interesting. So one character I was a bit frustrated with is Inara. She is not growing. She is extremely petty in that volume, in that book, but I think it might also make sense. She's still a kid. It might be one of those few fantasy books where we have a young character that really come across as being young and a bit childish, a bit petty, like I was saying. That's really the word that describes her in that Sunbringer book. So I'm quite excited. I'm quite curious to see how she's going to develop in book 3, especially with all the plot twists and the discovery we've made at the end of this book. So very, very curious. What did not work for me in Sunbringer, and you will see it's a critic I have in general for this month, is the number of point of view we are having. I think there is a bit too many point of view. We're having some point of view from Aaron, which is a king. I didn't necessarily see the benefit of them, but it's still manageable. It's still under control. Anna is not giving us tertiary characters point of view, so that was fine. It just took me a bit of time to get into the story because of the shift of point of view. And in general, being fantasy, romance, whatever book you give me, I always have trouble when there is one chapter dedicated to each characters. If you want to write and give us different perspective, just write with a third person narration. Don't give one chapter each character, make it a bit more of a cohesive mosaic. Getting that tool of one chapter per characters for me is really that it's a crutch, and it always kind of spoils my enjoyment on the book. So this is really a personal preference, so if you don't have that issues, I think you're gonna enjoy this book a lot more than I did, but it was still very nice to read, and I can't wait for book 3. I was actually a bit frustrated that we have book 3. I would like writers to stop to a duology, but I think there's a lot still to explore with that universe and those characters, so quite excited. I think it's going out in a few months. It's coming out in a few months, and Illumicrate is doing the third book as well, so I'm gonna get the pretty book again. One thing I'm gonna definitely buy this year. But yeah, so that was Sunbringer by Anna Cannon. Alright, then I kept with fantasy and I just came back home with Times Convert by Deborah Harkness. So this is book 4 in the All Souls trilogy, and yes, I know I'm saying trilogy and I'm mentioning book 4, so that's a bit complicated. But All Souls trilogy is very like 3 books that work together, that have a common plot. This, I always thought it was a 3.5 books, kind of an in-between book, but it really provides us with a continuation of those characters' lives, so I will call it book 4 now. And I need to switch my mind and say the All Souls series, but it's still difficult for me. Deborah Harkness for me is really a writer I really like. I love her universe in this series. I know the All Souls, I think the first book in English is A Discovery of Witches, and I know it's not necessarily a series that everyone likes and loves, but this is my favorite series so far. And this book did not disappoint at all. Like I say, we are following our main characters from the first 3 books with a deeper focus on Marcus, which was a secondary character, is a vampire. I don't think that's a spoil, everyone knows. And we are following him while he waits for his soulmate to go through that vampire transformation. And while he waits, he is telling his family of his past, of his life before becoming a vampire, his transformation, and then his kind of identity crisis post-transformation. But it's not all of what we're getting. We're also getting some real slice of life scenes with Diana and Matthew, which are our main character of the first 3 books, and that's what I really loved, because when I finished the Book of Life, the last book of the trilogy, I just wanted more. I wanted to see more of Diana, more of Matthew. I wanted to get them into a more relaxed atmosphere where no one was trying to kill them or threaten them or kidnap them. And that's what I got with Times Convert. So I'm really happy about this. The bonus for me is that we get to see some characters, I'm not gonna spoil, but we get to see some new characters that we were introduced to in book 3. We are still seeing them in book 4, and we get to see them evolve and how it's shifting kind of the family dynamics within that very whole vampire family. So this was honestly yeah, medicine for the heart. I don't have any other way to say it. I really loved it. Another thing that I really like with Deborah Harkness, and that is extremely present in Times Convert, is the way she integrates historical elements in her story. Deborah Harkness is an historian, and you can really feel it. The research, the amount of details she provides is just mind-blowing. Like, Marcus lived through the French Revolution. I am French and I thought I knew the big lines of it, but I've learned so much from this book about key characters that participated in French radicalization at that time that I've never learned about in high school, and I had to Google and look for it. And those characters were not just in the background, they were actually interacting with our fictional characters. So I really like how she's making history part of the story, or let's gonna say the reverse, her characters part of history, and it's just giving so much more realism to her books. So I really love that series, not just for this, but this is a big point that makes me such a huge fan of it. That's it, just give it a shot. I know some characters, especially in the first book, can seem a bit too much sometimes for some people, but give it a shot. Get into that narration that is a bit slow, a bit easygoing, a bit more on observing than very active, and I'm pretty sure you will love it. If you want me to do a more in-depth video on All Souls, I have so much more to say, please drop that in the comment, because I will love to dive in a bit more, and especially action series. So if you read the books as well, I haven't read book 5, just keep that in mind. Do not spoil me book 5, because I can't wait to start it. But if you have any yummy theories about the characters, especially Diana's powers, please drop a comment below so we can discuss it. Alright, after those 2 somewhat big fantasy books, I dive back in an old series of mine that I also like a lot, which is Rivers of London by Ben Aaronovitch, and I've dived it with that book. It's a 7.5, it's called The October Man, and it's really a bit more outside the series here because we are following completely different characters in a completely different country. But I think it's a nice introduction or reintroduction to the series if, like me, you've put it on hold for too long, because we still get the magic system, we still get the mystery, the police work, and the rivers. Not gonna say too much. Again, it's very difficult to review sequels because I don't want to spoil you, but I still want to give you, you know, if you don't know anything about this, sufficient elements so you can go check it out and read them. So hopefully I'm not spoiling too much and not being too cryptic as well. But with The October Man, like I say, it's a nice reintroduction to the story. Rivers of London is really kind of a mix between Sherlock Holmes and Harry Potter, we'll say, for Harry Potter fan, or Tara Duncan, if you read Tara Duncan in your childhood like I did. We have this policeman, it's Peter in the main series, that suddenly joined a special section of the London police. It's a section that he works around magical cases, and he learns to become a magician or a practitioner, as I called it in the book. And it's very interesting because we don't get just magic, we get also folklore, we get genies, and especially rivers are kind of a spirits and are living, breathing like you and I. So, and we also get, of course, the police plots and mysteries and work that they're doing. Anyway, pregnancy is that when I speak too long, I get so thirsty, so it's a lot of water breaks when I film those videos. Now, with the October Man, like I said, we're in a new country. We are in Germany, which I was not expecting. It's basically written because on the map, the edition I have on the cover, there is always a map of the section, the neighborhood from London where the story is going to take place. And this one, we have name in German on it, and I should also have known that it was in Germany because it's literally said in big bold characters in the back, but I rarely check the back cover of a book, so I didn't know. But it happened in Germany, which was a surprise for me. It happened in Trier, which I believe is a city where there was a lot of witch hunts in the 18th century. If you're a history fan, do not quote me on this, because I did not double check this, but I believe they had a lot of witch hunts in Germany, and I think it was in Trier, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, it was interesting to see that world expand beyond London and go a bit more inland of Europe. It kind of gave hope for more expansion, for seeing the Folly, which is the name of the magical police investigation team in London. But maybe we're gonna see the Folly interact a bit more with the rest of Europe and maybe see some, I don't know, different lore coming into, different mythology coming into in future investigation. And it also kind of brought that aspect of communication between different police force, especially on such a big matters as magic. I mean, if there is magical threats, if there is different spells that can explode people or turn them into mushrooms, I do hope that the different department of each countries is sharing that knowledge so that we can investigate a bit faster and hopefully save people a bit faster. Anyway, it was very interesting to read, and it's like 160 pages, something like that. 170, so it was very fast and a nice interlude between my books. My only kind of thing that it was a bit difficult for me and I didn't necessarily like is the main character was less witty than Peter from the main series, and also there was a lot of usage of German words, and please give a translation. It's good, Ben, I mean, you've done your research, that's great for you, but I did not, and I never studied German at all, so that was a bit, I would have liked to have the English translation at least, or an explanation. Anyway, alright, we are now arriving to Alizé, past Alizé, making bad book decision and picking up a book I was so excited to read in February and ending up being so disappointed about it this month, and that is none other than A Conjuring of Light by V.E.Schwab. In my last wrap-up, in the February wrap-up, I mentioned that I've read Gathering of Shadows, which is book 2, and that I've loved it, and that I've screamed at the end because we had a cliffhanger and I wanted to know what was going to happen, and I wanted to jump at book 3, but I ended up waiting for my friends. I should have not waited, or I should have not picked up the book in March, because this, my friends, was a disappointment. And I don't know if it's because I've read other great fantasy books in February, or just because V.E.Schwab is trying to do too much in this volume. It's quite big, it's bigger than the first two, but nothing happens. Well, that's not true. A lot of things happen, which maybe is the issue. Too much is happening, I guess, and it's extremely slow. The pacing, the rhythm, it felt like everything was happening at once, but at the same time, in a situation of urgency, time was stretching and nothing was happening and no one was reacting. It was extremely frustrating to read, and one thing that definitely caused issues for me is the multiple POVs. Remember, when I was just mentioning Sunbringer at the beginning of this video, I did say it was a personal thing that I don't like multiple POVs. But in A Conjuring of Light, there were so much POVs that I don't understand how anyone can follow the story. We have POVs of secondary characters, tertiary characters, characters we've never met before that just get the chapter once or twice, so it was extremely confusing. And whenever we were, for example, having Kel's POV and then jumping to Lila's POVs, we were going back in time slightly to pick up where we left that character, and that was extremely confusing for me. I did not want to do cerebral gymnastics when I read that book. I was kind of hoping to find that very well balanced rhythm and good amount of action we had in A Gathering of Shadows, and in the end it felt as if we were getting too much information. One thing that really frustrated me is every time we were coming or getting a proposed solution, and I was like, oh, they found a solution to solve that big issues, yes, they're gonna put it in place, I might struggle a little bit, but it's gonna end up working. No, I was not even 50% in the book. So of course it could not work, and that just gave up a bit frustration for me. I appreciate the fact that V.E.Schwab is showing that fantasy can be complex, and that, you know, one main critiques you can have with fantasy books is that the solution is given to the characters, or that there is plot holes. There is no plot holes, or maybe one or two with Conjuring of Light. There's not that much plot holes or issue with the plot. On the contrary, because she's showing so much, it was too much. So that's my main critique for this book, and that made me very strict on it. Like, I did not enjoy reading it, and I think when you don't enjoy reading a book, per sheer frustration, you get extremely sour about it. It was not good to finish my February month with it. One thing that did work for me in that book is that with all that struggle we get to have a solution, the ending kind of felt satisfactory, but I wish that there was a bit more editing in the book so we get to it quicker. I'm also a bit frustrated as the question around Kel's past is something I forgot that we mentioned in book 1, that well, we know he's not the biological son of the king and the queen, but he was still raised as a prince, so we know that. We briefly mention his past, how his name was chosen, for example, and why. And then in book 3, that past, that question of who are his parents and his family is brought up, and he just decided like to throw it away. This is not a spoiler because it does not impact the story, so don't get me. But he just decided to not learn about it, and I was like, then why did we mention it? What was the point in confirming that yes, you had a past, if he doesn't want to learn about it, if it's not impacting our plot at the moment, if it's not giving us solution for the big black demon we're trying to fight. Anyway, as you can see, it really frustrated me. I'm not going to speak more about this series. I will likely not read the second trilogy I think she's doing. It's called Threads of Powers. I know we get Reese, Kel and Lila back. I've read from Goodreads comments that Lila was as infuriating in the next book, so that's it for me. I'm not reading more, and I think I'm gonna stick to V.E.Schwab's Standalone because that's a book I liked. Gallant and The Invisible Life of Adilari were such big books for me, books that I've loved so much, so it's very disappointed to get such a strong negative opinion on the rest of her work. So I think I'm gonna leave her be for a while and not touch too much of her books. So yeah, that's it for my February read. I did pick up another book in February, but I finished it in March, so I will speak about it in my March wrap-up. For those wondering where are my French books for this month, because it is my goal to read one French book a month, it will be in the March wrap-up, but spoiler alert, I did not like it. It's another book that disappointed me. But yeah, what I'm going to read in March is I have to read Legend and Lattes. That's one of my 12 books of 2025. And I also want to dive into a duology that I think is a bit more speculative fiction that I've heard a lot about on YouTube, so I'm gonna do that in March. And if you're curious about my current and upcoming readings, I recommend you to follow me on Instagram because I do tend to give you a bit more weekly updates. What about you? What did you read in February? Was it as disappointed as mine? Did you have great readings? Tell me everything in the comment. I would love to chat with you. And as always, don't forget to like these videos and share it with fellow readers. And if you don't want to miss any future videos, hit that subscription button. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye!